so in example 6, it wants to simplify this expression. And it gave us some clues. But guys, they don't give you clues on the homework. And I'm not going to give you clues on the test. So, try to understand why they're doing these. So, the first thing we're going to do, we're simplifying. Whoops. And so, I notice everything's already in terms of sine and cosine, right? That's usually my first step. If I don't see a Pythagorean identity, I start switching everything to sine and cosine. But it's already there. So, but we're subtracting with fractions. Okay, so how do we find... Alright, in order to subtract the fractions, we're going to have a common denominator. How can we find a common denominator? Well, the easiest way to get a common denominator is just to multiply your denominators, isn't it?
Yes.
Alright, so that means we're going to take 1 minus sine and multiply it by cosine. Now, sometimes it's easier to find a least common denominator, but if nothing else, this at least get us started. Alright, and this one actually is our least common denominator. But remember, what you multiply the denominator by, you have to multiply the numerator by. So, my original first fraction was cosine of x over 1 minus sine. What did I multiply that 1 minus sine by? So multiply the top by it. My second fraction was originally sine of x over cosine of x. What did I multiply cosine of x by?
1 minus sine of x.
So multiply the top by it as well. So, and then we take and we combine our numerators, and remember we put it over the common denominator. So I'm actually just going to write it out this one time. Usually I'd go ahead and work some, but this time I'm just going to write it. So we have cosine of x times cosine of x minus sine of x times 1 minus sine of x.
Oh my gosh, that was so funny.
Alright, so and we're going to put this all over our least common denominator, or our common denominator, which we said was, I'm going to put the cosine of x first just because it's by itself. I always put single terms first. So cosine of x times 1 minus sine of x.
Are we gonna distribute?
We are. So now let's combine. So cosine times cosine is?
Cosine squared.
So I have cosine squared of x. Let's distribute this negative sine of x. So what's negative sine of x times 1? Negative sine of x. And what's negative sine of x times negative sine of x?
Sine of x squared.
Positive sine squared over the common denominator.
You could see the fear in my dad's eyes.
What's that?
Are we gonna strip?
Okay, now the question was, are we going to distribute the denominator? Not yet, because I'm not sure where I'm going with that numerator. So, if I need to distribute it later, I can. Here's the thing, though. If I went ahead and distributed it and I didn't need it, I could always factor it back out later as well, okay? So, it's just a personal option. I may be causing an extra step, but then again, I may not be. I don't know yet. So, we'll find out. All right, so what can we do in our numerator?
Oh, we can do a little oh wait, no.
Yeah. Well, I see some...
We can cancel things out.
No, we can't cancel anything out. But I see some squared trig functions. So, are those two by chance in the same Pythagorean identity?
No,
They are. So, we know that cosine squared plus sine squared equals 1. So I'm going to take and rewrite my numerator. I'm going to change the order around. So I've got cosine squared is a positive sine squared, a negative sine of x over my least common denominator, or common denominator. And since I could do that, I do have cosine squared plus sine squared, don't I? What is cosine squared plus sine squared equal to? So I can put this whole thing as 1. So now in my numerator, I have 1 minus sine of x over that denominator.
Wait.
Okay, what now?
That would cancel out like
Yeah, the 1 minus sign is on top and bottom. It is super glued together with the minus sign, but the entire thing's on top, and we have an entire one on bottom. So that leaves me with a cosine of x on bottom. What's on top?
1.
And what is 1 over cosine?
Secant of x.
So we get secant of x is our answer.
Why do we have to put QED?
You don't have to put QUD.
Wait, I was.
Just putting it there so if you look at the notes online, you'll be used to it. If you see it later, then you'll know.